Wido receives straw-thatched cottage as humiliation, but a secret changes everything. Martha Harrison never imagined that at 72 years old she would be carrying old suitcases into the middle of nowhere. The reading of the will had taken place just 3 days ago, and what should have been a moment of comfort after losing her husband had turned into the greatest humiliation of her life. Her sister-in-law, Linda Harrison, had a smile on her lips when she handed over the keys. While the other relatives received apartments on the Upper East Side, commercial stores, and bank investments, Martha received a property that no one else wanted. The straw-thatched cottage in rural Nebraska. The heat beat down hard as she looked at that structure that could barely stand. The walls were made of dry straw tied with old ropes, the roof had visible holes, and the door was just a piece of rotten wood hanging. All around, only dry, cracked earth, with no sign of life. "Look what a wonderful gift your husband left for you," Linda had said during the reading. "A historic property. He was always so creative in his choices." The mocking tone was not missed by anyone. The other relatives lowered their eyes, embarrassed, but no one protested. Martha felt her cheeks burn. 45 years of marriage to Arthur, and that was all that remained? A house that wasn't even worth the land it was built on? Now, standing before that miserable construction, Martha felt the weight of the suitcases in her arms. There were only 2, with basic clothes and some personal belongings. The rest of her life was left behind. The apartment where she lived with Arthur was sold to pay debts she knew nothing about. The jewelry she thought was valuable had mysteriously disappeared after the funeral. Her children lived far away and had their own families, their own worries. She was alone. The sun began to set, painting the sky orange and red. Martha took the first step toward the house. The door creaked when she pushed it, and a smell of mold invaded her nostrils. The interior was even worse than the exterior. There was no furniture, just a dirt floor and some old planks leaning against the wall. Spiderwebs covered the corners, and small holes in the straw allowed the twilight light to enter in thin golden rays. She dropped the suitcases on the floor and sat on one of them. Her legs trembled, not just from the fatigue of the journey, but from the reality that imposed itself. This was everything. 72 years of life reduced to a straw-thatched cottage in the middle of nowhere. The tears came without asking permission, streaming down her wrinkled face. She cried for the humiliation, for the loneliness, for the uncertain future. When night fell completely, Martha realized there was no electricity. She used her cell phone as a flashlight until the battery died. The darkness was absolute. She lay down on the hard floor, using one of the suitcases as a pillow, and pulled an old dress over herself as a blanket. The wind blew through the gaps in the straw, bringing strange sounds from the open field. Every noise seemed like a threat. She couldn't sleep properly. Every moment she woke up frightened, thinking she heard footsteps or voices. When the sun finally rose, it found her with red eyes and an aching body. She left the house to explore the surroundings. The property was larger than she had imagined, perhaps about 5,000 square meters of dry, unused land. The fence that marked the boundary was down in several places. In the distance, she could see other houses. They were simple constructions, but much better than hers. There were signs of life, clothes hanging on lines, chickens pecking in yards, smoke coming from chimneys. A small community, probably made up of humble families who worked the land or on nearby farms. Martha went back inside and began to search the space more thoroughly. She needed to understand what she had to work with. She found a rusty metal bucket and some old tools thrown in a corner. There was also a thin, rolled-up, mouldy mattress, which she threw out immediately. While moving the planks leaning against the wall, she discovered that some were still sturdy and could be used for something. Her stomach growled. She had brought some crackers and a bottle of water, but she knew it wouldn't last long. She needed to find resources, but how? She didn't know anyone there. She had no dollars. The pension she would receive would only come at the end of the month, 3 weeks away. Around midday, she heard voices outside. She went out and saw 2 women walking along the dirt road that passed in front of the property. When they noticed Martha, they stopped and looked at her curiously. They were younger, perhaps in their 40s. "Good morning," said one of them hesitantly. "Are you new here, ma'am?" Martha nodded, not quite knowing what to say. "My name is Jennifer. This is my sister, Pamela. We live over there." She pointed to a house about 200 meters away. "This property has been abandoned for years. I didn't even know it still had an owner. I'm Martha. I just inherited the place." The two exchanged glances. Pamela, the shorter of the sisters, asked, "Did you come alone, ma'am? Do you have family around here?" "No, just me." Jennifer scratched her head, seeming uncomfortable. "Look, I don't mean anything by it, but this house here, it's not in good shape. Don't you have another place to stay?" The question hurt more than it should have. Martha forced a smile. "For now, it's what I have. I'll manage. If you need water, there's a community well up ahead." Pamela pointed to the end of the road. "Everyone uses it. You can go fetch some there too." "Thank you." The sisters said goodbye and went on their way, but Martha noticed they looked back several times, commenting on something between themselves. They probably thought she was crazy for wanting to stay there. Maybe they were right. She picked up the rusty bucket and walked to the well. It was a simple brick structure with a wooden pulley and a rope tied to another bucket. Some women were there, washing clothes in makeshift basins. When Martha approached, the conversation stopped. "Excuse me," she said, trying to sound confident. "May I get some water?" A woman with white hair and a sun-weathered face nodded. "Yes. Help yourself. It's for everyone." Martha pulled the rope and filled her bucket. The water was cool and clean. She thanked them and went back to the straw-thatched cottage, feeling the curious eyes on her. She wasn't welcome yet, but she wasn't rejected either. She was in the social limbo of that small community. Back at the straw-thatched cottage, she tried to sweep the dirt floor using a dry branch as a broom. The physical effort hurt her back and knees, but she couldn't stop. If she was going to stay there, she needed to make the place minimally livable. She worked until the sun began to set again, when exhaustion won out. On that second night, she slept a little better, but woke up startled several times. She dreamed of Arthur. In the dream, he was standing in the doorway of the straw-thatched cottage, looking at her with an expression she couldn't decipher. He tried to say something, but no sound came from his mouth. She woke up with a racing heart, feeling a strange mix of anger and longing. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out, now continuing. The next morning, Martha decided to explore the property better. She walked to the boundaries of the land, observing every corner. The land was dry and unproductive, but there were a few scattered trees, dry and twisted. Near the back fence, she found a small structure she hadn't noticed before. It was a tiny shed, also made of old wood, but it seemed to have been used for storing tools. She pushed the door, which resisted before giving way. Inside it was dark and stuffy. She used the light from her cell phone, which was low on battery. There were more rusty tools, some torn sacks that probably held seeds decades ago, and stacked wooden crates. She opened the first crate and found only old rags. The second had empty bottles. In the third crate, at the bottom, her fingers touched something different. She pulled it out and saw it was a small metal case, the size of a shoebox, covered in rust. Her heart beat faster. She tried to open it, but it was locked. She shook it and heard something moving inside. She took the case outside where there was more light. She examined every corner, looking for a way to open it. There was no key and the lock was badly rusted. She would need some tool to force it. She went back to the shed and got an old screwdriver. Carefully, she began working on the lock. After nearly an hour of effort, she heard a click. The lid gave way slowly. Inside, there were documents, old papers yellowed with time, some torn at the edges. Martha removed them carefully and took them inside the house where she would have more privacy. She sat on the floor and began to examine them. Most were in terrible condition, almost illegible. She managed to make out some names, dates, and numbers, but it didn't make much sense. There was what appeared to be a land purchase receipt, dated over 40 years ago. The buyer's name was smudged, but she could read the amount. A ridiculous sum, even for the time. Another document seemed to be a letter, but the ink was so faded she could only read isolated words: secret, protection, future, trust. Frustrated, she set the papers aside. Perhaps they were just old junk, of no importance at all. The following days were difficult. Martha rationed the food she had brought, eating only what was necessary to avoid fainting. Her body was weak, and her mood worsened. She avoided leaving the property too much, afraid of running into the neighbors and having to answer questions. The loneliness weighed on her, but her pride weighed even more. One afternoon, she heard a knock at the door. When she opened it, she found Jennifer, the neighbor, holding a pot. "I brought some soup," she said with a timid smile. "I made too much and thought you might like some." Martha looked at the pot, her stomach growling. Her pride screamed to refuse, but her hunger was stronger. "You didn't have to go to the trouble." "It's no trouble. We help each other out here. That's how it works." Martha took the pot, murmuring a thank you. Jennifer waved and left. Alone again, Martha ate the soup slowly, savoring every spoonful. It was simple, just vegetables and a little shredded chicken, but it was the best thing she had eaten in days. The tears came again, this time of gratitude mixed with shame. The next day she returned the washed pot. Jennifer was in the yard, hanging laundry. "Thank you for the soup," said Martha. "It was delicious." "You're welcome. Are you settling in okay?" "I'm trying." Jennifer hesitated before speaking. "Look, I don't mean to be nosy, but do you have family? Someone who can help?" Martha pressed her lips together. "I have children, but they live far away. I don't want to bother them." "And your husband?" "He is gone. Recently." "Oh, I'm so sorry." Jennifer lowered her eyes. "That must be hard." "It is." An uncomfortable silence settled. Martha said goodbye and went back home, feeling the weight of the conversation. She didn't want to talk about Arthur. She didn't want to relive the pain of loss mixed with the anger she felt. How could he have left her in this situation? Where was all the money she believed existed? She spent the rest of the day organizing the old documents she had found. She tried to piece together a puzzle from the fragmented information. There were mentions of geographical coordinates, but she had no way to verify where they pointed. There was also something about markers and landmarks, as if they were instructions for finding something. As the sun began to set, Martha realized she had spent hours immersed in those papers. Part of her thought it was a waste of time, that she was looking for meaning where there was none. But another part, smaller and more hopeful, believed that perhaps there was something important there, something that could change her situation. That night, lying on the hard floor, she thought of Arthur again. They met when they were young, at a party at a mutual friend's house. He was handsome, charming, and ambitious. She was shy, but was enchanted by his confidence. They married quickly, despite her family's doubts. The first years were financially difficult, but they were happy, or she thought they were. When the children were born, Arthur worked even harder. He started by selling products door to door, then got a steady job, and eventually opened his own business. Things got better. They bought the apartment on the Upper East Side, had a comfortable life. Martha never had to work outside. She dedicated herself to raising the children and taking care of the house. She thought everything was fine. But did she really know her husband? In recent years, he had become more withdrawn, spending a lot of time working. He said he was securing their future. Martha believed him. Why would she doubt? They had been together for decades. Trust was the foundation of everything. Now lying in that miserable straw-thatched cottage, she questioned everything. The jewels that disappeared, the unknown debts, the ridiculous pension. Was there something Arthur had hidden from her? Or had his family deceived her? The next day, a storm approached. The sky was heavy from early on, dark, heavy clouds taking over. Martha knew the house wouldn't withstand heavy rain. She looked for something to cover the holes in the roof, found some old tarps in the shed, and tried to secure them as best she could. When the rain started, it was violent. The wind blew hard, making the straw structure sway dangerously. Water came in from all sides. Martha stood in the center of the house, holding the suitcases to protect what she had that was most important. The old documents were stored in a plastic bag inside one of the suitcases. The storm lasted for hours, At one point, part of the roof gave way, a wooden beam falling just inches from her. Martha screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the noise of the rain and wind. She was soaked, shivering from cold and fear. She thought the whole house would collapse on her. When the storm finally passed, it was already night. Martha was too exhausted to do anything but wrap herself in wet clothes and try to sleep. The floor had turned to mud. Everything was destroyed. The straw-thatched cottage, which was already terrible, was now practically uninhabitable. Dawn came and she went out to assess the damage. The site was desolate. Half the roof had fallen, the walls were crooked, and pieces of straw were scattered everywhere. There was no longer any way to pretend it was a house. It was just wreckage. She sat on the wet ground and began to cry. She cried for everything, for the life she lost, for the husband who was gone, for the humiliation she suffered, for the loneliness she felt. She cried until she had no more tears. That's when she heard footsteps. She looked up and saw Jennifer approaching with a worried expression. "I saw the storm yesterday. I came to see if you were okay." She looked around, seeing the destruction. "My God, you can't stay here. Come to my house." "No," Martha wiped her face. "I don't need charity." "It's not charity, it's humanity. You'll get sick staying here in this dampness." "I'll be fine." Jennifer sighed, clearly frustrated. "Mrs. Martha, with all due respect, you're being stubborn. No one can live like this. Accept help while you still can." "I said I don't need it." Martha raised her voice. "I can take care of myself." "All right," Jennifer raised her hands in surrender. "But if you change your mind, my door is open." She left and Martha stayed there alone among the wreckage. She knew she had been rude, but she couldn't accept pity. She had already lost everything. She wouldn't lose her dignity too. She spent the following days trying to minimally rebuild the house. She gathered the straw that was still usable, tied it with old ropes, covered the larger holes with planks. It wasn't good, but it was better than nothing. Her hands became full of cuts and splinters. Her back ached constantly. But she kept working. A week after the storm, a car stopped in front of the property. Martha was outside trying to fix the fence when she saw Linda, her sister-in-law, get out of the vehicle. Her heart sank. "So, you're still here," said Linda, looking around with disdain. "I thought you'd have given up by now. What do you want?" "I've come with good news." Linda flashed a fake smile. "I found a buyer for this land. He offered a fair price. We can split the dollars." "It's not for sale." "Martha, be reasonable. What are you going to do here? Look at this place, it's worthless. Take the dollars and go live your last years with dignity." "I said it's not for sale." Linda crossed her arms. "You know I have power of attorney over my brother's assets. I can sell with or without your permission." "That's not true. The will was clear. This property is mine. We'll see what the lawyers say about that." Linda got back in the car and drove off, kicking up dust. Martha stood still, fear settling in her chest. Could it be true? Could Linda take even this from her? That night she couldn't sleep. Anxiety consumed her thoughts. She had no dollars for a lawyer. She had no way to fight if Linda really decided to sue. She was completely vulnerable. The next morning she decided to examine the old documents again. Perhaps there was something that could help, some proof that the property was legitimately hers. She spread all the papers on the floor and began to analyze them more carefully. That's when she noticed something she hadn't seen before. In one corner of a particularly deteriorated paper, there was a penciled note, almost invisible. "Marker 1, base of the dry tree." She looked more and found other similar notes. Marker 2, large rock. Marker 3, northeast corner. Could it be a map? Instructions to find something. Martha felt a spark of hope. She took the papers and left the house, searching for the mentioned markers. The dry tree was easy to identify. There was one right in the center of the land, deader than the others. She went to it and began to dig around the exposed roots. She dug until her hands bled, but found nothing. Frustrated, she went to the large rock near the fence. She dug there too. Nothing. She tried to identify the northeast corner of the property and dug once more. Still nothing. She fell to her knees, exhausted and desperate. Perhaps she was going mad, looking for imaginary treasures like a child. But what more did she have to lose? As she tried to get up, her hand touched something strange under the loose soil. She dug more vigorously and found a metal can buried. Her heart raced. She pulled the can out and opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were more documents, these in better condition. And there were also photographs. Martha held them carefully. They were old, black and white photos. One of them showed a young man she recognized immediately, Arthur. But he was in front of this same straw-thatched cottage, much newer and well-kept. Beside him, a young woman Martha didn't recognize. She turned the photo over and read the inscription on the back. Arthur and Elizabeth, 1978. Elizabeth? Who was Elizabeth? Martha felt a knot in her stomach. Was there a past of her husband's that she knew nothing about? She kept examining the photos. There were more of Arthur and Elizabeth together, always on that same property. They looked happy. In one of the photos, she was pregnant. Martha felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. Arthur had another family, before her. The questions multiplied. Why had he never mentioned this? Who was this Elizabeth? What happened to her and the baby? She dropped the photos and picked up the documents. One of them was a marriage certificate. Arthur Harrison and Elizabeth Miller married in 1977. Martha let go of the paper as if it burned. He was married before. How did she not know this? Another document was a deed. The straw-thatched cottage and the land had been purchased by Arthur in 1978, registered in his name only. There was no mention of Elizabeth. There was also a hospital receipt, dated 1979, with Elizabeth's name on it. The medical terms were confusing, but it seemed related to childbirth. Martha gathered everything and went back inside the house. She sat down and stared at that evidence of a life Arthur had before her. They met in 1982. He never mentioned a previous marriage, never spoke of Elizabeth, never said he had already lived there, on that same property that now humiliated her. The anger she felt was overwhelming. It wasn't just about the omission, but about everything it meant. The straw-thatched cottage wasn't a random inheritance. It was part of his past, a past he had deliberately hidden. She stayed awake all night, going over every memory of Arthur, looking for signs she should have seen. There were times when he seemed distant, thoughtful. She always attributed it to work, to financial worries, but maybe that was it. Maybe he was thinking of Elizabeth, of the life he had before. The next day, Martha went to Jennifer's house. She knocked hesitantly. When the neighbor opened the door, she was surprised. "Mrs. Martha, is something wrong?" "I need to ask a question. Do you or anyone here live in this area for a long time?" "My mother has lived here since she got married in the 60s. Why?" "Did she know a man named Arthur Harrison? He lived on that property decades ago." Jennifer thought for a moment. "The name doesn't sound familiar, but I can ask her. Come in, I'll call her." Martha entered the simple but cozy house. Jennifer went to the back and returned with a lady with completely white hair leaning on a cane. "Mum, this is Mrs. Martha. She wants to know about someone who lived on the old property." The lady looked at Martha with tired but kind eyes. "Arthur Harrison, yes, I remember him. Hard-working young man, lived there with his wife for about 2 years, more or less." "His wife? Elizabeth?" "That's right. Pretty girl, but delicate. Had health problems." "What happened to her?" The lady sat down slowly. "She had the baby, a boy, but she herself didn't make it. It was a great sadness. Arthur was devastated, not long after he left, taking the boy. He never came back." Martha felt the floor give way beneath her feet. Elizabeth was gone. And there was a son, a boy who would be Arthur's son. Where was this child now? Why did Arthur never mention him? "Do you know the boy's name?" "I don't remember, it was so long ago. But I know Arthur left the house locked, said he might come back one day, but he never did." Martha thanked her and left with her head spinning. Arthur had a son from another marriage, a son she never knew. Where would this man be now? He would be about 45. Did he know of her existence? Did he know his father had remarried? The questions wouldn't stop, And the most important one of all, why did Arthur leave that property specifically to her? It wasn't just cruelty. There was a reason. There had to be. She returned to the straw-thatched cottage, determined to find more answers. If documents were buried in one place, there could be others. She took the screwdriver and began looking for loose floorboards. She tested each one. In the darkest corner of the house, one of the boards gave way easily. Underneath was an empty space. Martha illuminated with her cell phone and saw another metal case similar to the first. She pulled it out and opened it. Inside, more documents. But these were different. They were recent. Handwritten letters, with the handwriting she would recognize anywhere. Arthur. The letters were addressed to her. "My dear Martha," began the first one, "if you are reading this, it means you have found what I left hidden. I know you must be confused and hurt. I have so much to explain, but I did not have the courage in life. Forgive my cowardice." The letter continued, explaining about Elizabeth. They met when they were young, married passionately. They bought that land with the few resources they had, built the straw-thatched cottage together, dreaming of the future. When Elizabeth became pregnant, they were the happiest months of his life. But the pregnancy was complicated. Elizabeth was fragile, and the delivery was difficult. She managed to bring the boy into the world, but her own body could not withstand it. Arthur was left with a newborn and a shattered heart. He couldn't stay in that house that reminded him of everything he had lost. He left, taking his son. "I tried to be a good father to him, Martha, but I myself was broken. I drank too much, worked little. It was my sister Linda who really raised the boy in the early years. I only managed to get back on my feet when I met you." Martha stopped reading. Linda raised the boy, so she knew everything. Her anger grew. Linda knew this whole story and never said a word. Worse, she used that knowledge to humiliate her. She continued reading. Arthur explained that when he met Martha, he saw a chance to start over. He hid the past because he was ashamed. He was afraid she wouldn't accept a man with so much baggage. He rebuilt his life, formed a new family. But he never forgot Elizabeth or the house where they were briefly happy. The boy grew up and became a good man despite me. But our relationship was always distant. He blamed me for emotionally abandoning him. He was right. When you came into my life, I dedicated myself more to you and our children. I tried to make up for past mistakes by being better in the present. But the first son was always left aside. Tears streamed down Martha's face as she read. She had married a man she thought she knew, but who kept so many secrets. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out, now continuing. In recent years, my health worsened. I knew I didn't have much time. I began to organize everything. I discovered that my family, especially Linda, had their eyes on the assets. They didn't care about me, only about what I would leave behind. I needed to protect you, Martha, but I also needed to do right by my first son. The letter explained that Arthur had set up a complex plan. He knew the family would show their true colors after his departure. Therefore, he left specific instructions in the will. The straw-thatched cottage for Martha was a test. If she gave up, if she abandoned it out of pride, she would lose everything. But if she stayed, if she had the courage to face the humiliation and seek the answers, she would find what truly mattered. Hidden on this property is the truth about my financial life. I spent years transferring assets to accounts and investments that only you can access, but only if you prove you deserve it, only if you show you have the strength I always admired in you. Martha reread this part several times. There was more hidden wealth. Arthur set everything up to test her. The idea was both comforting and disturbing. He trusted her, but he also manipulated her. The letter continued with coordinates, numbers that should point to specific locations on the property. Follow the markers, first the past, then the present, finally the future, in each one a part of the truth. Martha gathered all the letters and the maps. There were 3 sets of coordinates. She had already found the first one, with the photos and documents about Elizabeth. 2 were missing. She took an old compass she found in the shed and began to follow the directions. The second marker led to the southern fence. She dug there and found another buried tin. Inside, bank documents, account statements in her name with amounts that took her breath away. Thousands, tens of thousands. Dollars that Arthur had deposited over the years, hidden from everyone. There were also property deeds, not just for that straw-thatched cottage, but for 2 other properties in different towns. Commercial stores that were rented out, generating monthly income. All in Martha's name, but she never knew. Arthur kept it all secret. The revelation was overwhelming. She wasn't poor, she never was poor. Arthur had ensured she would have resources but hid them so only she could find them. The family that tried to rob her knew nothing of this. With trembling hands, she went after the 3rd marker. The coordinates led to the center of the property, near the foundation of the straw-thatched cottage. She dug deeper than before. The shovel hit something solid. She kept digging around it until she exposed a large metal box, locked with a padlock. She broke the padlock with a sledgehammer found in the shed. She opened the box and was speechless. Inside were more documents, but also something unexpected. Jewelry. The same jewelry she thought she had lost after the funeral. Arthur had hidden it there before leaving. It wasn't stolen, it was protected. Along with the jewelry, a final letter. Martha, if you've gotten this far, you've proven your strength. The family will try to take everything from you, Linda especially. She knows about my first son and will use that to manipulate the situation. But you now have all the proof you need. The documents in this box ensure that everything we built is legally yours. My first son will receive his fair share. It's already documented and paid. He doesn't need the inheritance to survive, I guaranteed that years ago. But you, my dear, will need to fight. Use this evidence. Do not let their greed destroy you. Martha carefully put everything away. For the first time in weeks, she felt something different from despair. She felt power. Arthur may have been flawed, may have hidden painful truths, but he also protected her. In his own twisted way, he loved her. In the following days, Martha organized all the documents. She sought out a lawyer in a neighboring town, paying for the consultation with money from the accounts she had discovered. She showed the evidence, the bank statements, the property deeds, Arthur's letter explaining everything. The lawyer, a middle-aged man named Mr. James Bennett, examined everything carefully. Mrs. Martha, these documents are solid. Your late husband was very meticulous. Everything is properly recorded, authenticated at the notary public office. Legally, these assets are yours with no possible contest. And my sister-in-law? She said she has power of attorney. If she does, it's fake or limited. The will is clear regarding the ownership of this land, and the other assets aren't even in the will because they were already in your name. She has no right to any of it. Martha felt immense relief, but she also had questions. Mr. Bennett, my husband had a son from another marriage. Does that son have a right to the inheritance? It depends. If he was legally recognized and there is documentation, yes, he would be entitled to a portion. Did the gentleman leave anything documented about this? In the letters, he says he already secured the son's portion, but I don't know the details. We need to investigate, but the important thing now is to protect what we already know is yours. Martha hired the lawyer. She returned to the straw-thatched cottage, but now with a different perspective. It was no longer just wreckage. It was the place where Arthur kept his secrets, where he tested her love and her strength. It was the beginning of a new life. Linda returned a week later, accompanied by a man in a suit. She found Martha outside, fixing the fence. Martha, this is Mr. David Sterling, my lawyer. We've come to formalize the sale of the property. There will be no sale. Martha straightened her back, staring at her sister-in-law. And I suggest you and your lawyer leave before I call mine. Linda let out a mocking laugh. Your lawyer? With what dollars would you pay a lawyer? With my dollars. The dollars that Arthur left specifically for me, documented and legalized. Or did you think I wouldn't find out? Linda's expression changed. The smile vanished. What are you talking about? Arthur hid assets in my name, bank accounts, properties, investments. It's all documented, authenticated, legal, and you have no right to any of it. That's a lie. Arthur had nothing hidden. Yes, he did. And he knew exactly the kind of person you are. That's why he protected what was mine. Linda's lawyer intervened. Mrs., if these documents really exist, we will need to see them to validate. My lawyer, Mr. James Bennett, has authenticated copies of everything. You can contact him. Martha handed over a card. Now please, leave my property. Linda turned red with anger. You don't know who you're messing with, Martha. I'll prove those documents are fake. I'll destroy you in court. Try, but you'll be the one who regrets it. Linda and the lawyer left. Martha watched the car disappear down the dirt road, feeling a satisfaction she hadn't experienced in a long time. It wasn't revenge, it was justice. In the following days, Mr. James Bennett worked fast. He contacted Linda's lawyer, presented all the documents. The reaction was immediate. They tried to contest it, alleging forgery, manipulation. But every document had notary public authentication, dates prior to Arthur's passing, verified signatures. There was no way to deny the legitimacy. Linda became desperate. She called Martha several times, alternating between threats and attempts at negotiation. Martha didn't answer. She left everything in the lawyer's hands. One afternoon she received an unexpected visit. A man in his 40s knocked on the door. He was tall, thin, with hair beginning to grey. There was something familiar about his face. Mrs. Martha Harrison? He asked respectfully. Yes, that's me. My name is Raymond. Raymond Harrison Miller. I am Arthur's son, from his first marriage. Martha felt her heart tighten. It was him. The son Arthur had with Elizabeth, the boy from the letters. Please come in. Come. Raymond entered hesitantly, looking around the patched, straw-thatched cottage. I've never been here, my father never brought me back, but I heard this is where he and my mother lived. Have a seat. Martha indicated an improvised bench. Would you like some water? No, thank you. I came because... It's hard to talk about this. My Aunt Linda approached me. Said you're trying to steal my inheritance. Martha sighed. I can imagine what she told you. But the truth is different. Your father left very clear instructions. You are entitled to your share, and it has already been secured. You didn't know this. Raymond looked confused. What do you mean? Your father set up a trust fund in your name years ago. I don't know the exact details, but in the letters he left for me, he mentions he secured your future. You never received any documents about it? No, I mean, I have a fund I've been receiving since I was 25. I thought it was life insurance or something. I never questioned it much. That was your father looking after you, even from a distance. Raymond lowered his eyes. He wasn't a good father. He was always absent, even when he was present. My Aunt Linda raised me more than he did. He knew that, and he felt guilty about it. Martha hesitated before continuing. I know it's strange to talk like this. You don't know me. But I found letters your father wrote before he left. He talks about you, about the regret, about having failed. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know the truth. Your father wasn't perfect, far from it. But he tried, in his own twisted way, to fix his mistakes. You have your inheritance secured, and I have mine. Linda is trying to take from both of us. Raymond was silent for a long moment. My aunt always said my father was controlling, that he didn't trust the family. But maybe she was wrong, or lying. Arthur had his reasons not to trust, and now I see he was right. What are you going to do with this house? Martha looked around. I haven't decided yet. Part of me wants to tear it down. Another part wants to preserve it. This is where your mother and your father were happy, however briefly. This is where you were born. Raymond was moved. I didn't know I was born right here. From what I've found, yes. Your father kept documents, photos. I can show you if you'd like. I would like that. Martha picked up the photos of Elizabeth and Arthur. Raymond held them carefully, as if they were fragile. She was beautiful, he said, his voice choked. I never had any pictures of her. My aunt said there weren't any. Another lie, your father kept everything. Raymond spent hours there, looking at the photos, reading the documents Martha allowed. He cried several times. When he finally got up to leave, he was different, less tense. "Thank you for this. Thank you for showing me a part of my parents I never knew. You can visit whenever you want. This house was the beginning of your life. You have a right to know it." "I'll be back," he promised. "And if my Aunt Linda causes more trouble, let me know. I won't let her do this to you." Raymond left, but he returned 2 weeks later, and then more times. Gradually, they developed a strange but comforting relationship. It wasn't maternal. Martha was too young at the time of his birth for that role, but it was one of mutual respect, of shared understanding. Raymond revealed more about the family. Linda had always been manipulative, pitting siblings against each other. When Arthur started to succeed in business, she became increasingly interested. She tried several times to convince him to make risky investments that would benefit her. Arthur always refused. "She was furious when my father married you," Raymond recounted. "She said you were a gold digger, that you only wanted his money. But I think the problem was something else. She couldn't control you like she controlled the others. Your father never told me about these family conflicts. He kept everything inside. That was his way, a bad way, but it was." Martha agreed. Arthur had so many layers of secrets that sometimes it seemed he had lived several parallel lives. Meanwhile, the legal proceedings advanced. Mr. James Bennett managed to prove the forgery of documents that Linda had tried to use. She had forged powers of attorney, tried to transfer properties illegally. The evidence was clear. A judge ruled that all assets documented in Martha's name were legitimate and untouchable. Linda was investigated for attempted fraud. Other family members who had benefited from the initial division began returning funds, afraid of being implicated too. The truth about Arthur's past with Elizabeth spread through the family. Many were shocked. Some tried to get close to Raymond, but he rejected them. He wanted nothing to do with those people. Martha decided not to press criminal charges against Linda, despite Mr. James Bennett's suggestion, not out of kindness, but out of weariness. She wanted peace, not revenge. But Linda lost all respect and influence in the family. She became isolated, bitter. With her financial situation resolved, Martha could have gone anywhere, bought a comfortable apartment on the Upper East Side, lived out her later years in peace. But she chose to stay. She renovated the straw-thatched cottage, this time properly. She kept the original structure, but reinforced everything, added electricity, running water, basic comforts. It wasn't luxurious, but it was solid and welcoming. The surrounding community reacted well. Jennifer and other neighbors helped with the renovation. Martha hired local workers, paid fair wages. She invested in improvements for the region. She fixed the community well, helped build a small school, funded a basic community health clinic. She didn't do it for show or to gain gratitude. She did it because she finally had resources and wanted to use them meaningfully. The community that had taken her in when she was at rock bottom deserved something in return. Raymond visited regularly. He brought his wife and children. The children played on the land where their father was born, not knowing the whole story. Martha told them the parts appropriate for children, about the house built with love, about dreams and fresh starts. One afternoon, as she watched the children run, Jennifer sat down beside her. "You know, when you first arrived here, I didn't think you'd last a week. You seemed so lost." "I was lost," Martha admitted. "Completely. And now? Now I am found, not in the way I expected, but found. You transformed this place, not just the house, but everything around it. It wasn't me, it was necessity. I was forced to see beyond my pride. Still, most people would have given up." Martha thought about that. How many times had she almost given up? How many nights had she cried, wanting to turn back time? But she didn't turn back. She moved forward because it was the only option. "Arthur knew what he was doing," she said. "He knew me better than I knew myself. He knew that if he gave me everything easily, I wouldn't value it. He needed to make me fight, to discover my own strength." It was cruel, in a way. It was. But it was also necessary. The months passed. The straw-thatched cottage, once a symbol of humiliation, became a symbol of resilience. People from the region began to know the story. Not all the details, but enough. The widow who received a miserable house and turned it into a home. Martha created a small garden on the land. She planted flowers, some vegetables. The soil, once dry and barren, responded well with proper care. Jennifer taught her cultivation techniques, shared seeds. Other neighbors joined in. The land flourished. Raymond brought saplings. They planted them together, each in memory. One for Elizabeth, the mother he never knew. One for Arthur, the flawed father. One for Martha, for the strength she found. And several others, just for the beauty of watching them grow. One day, an unfamiliar car stopped in front of the house. Martha was in the garden when a man in sunglasses got out. "Mrs. Martha Harrison?" "Yes." "I'm Mr. Robert Vance, from Mr. James Bennett's office. He asked me to deliver this to you personally." He handed her a large envelope. Martha opened it and found legal documents. They were the final papers of the inheritance, finally released. It was all settled. Officially, legally, everything Arthur had wanted to protect was secured. "There's also this." Mr. Robert Vance handed her a small box. "It was in a bank-safe deposit box registered in your name. Mr. James Bennett only gained access now." Martha took the box. When the lawyer left, she opened it. Inside, a delicate necklace with a heart-shaped pendant. She recognized it immediately. It was the necklace she wore when she married Arthur. She had lost it years ago, or thought she had, but like the jewels, he had kept it safe. Along with the necklace, a note. Arthur's last message. "Martha, this necklace represents the happiest day of my life. The day you agreed to stay with me, despite all my flaws I didn't even know yet. I kept it to protect it, as I tried to protect you. Forgive me for all the secrets. Forgive me for testing your strength when I should have just trusted in it. Wear this necklace and remember, you were always stronger than I deserved." Martha held the necklace carefully. The tears came, but this time they were different. Not of anger or sadness, but of acceptance. Arthur was who he was flawed, secretive, complicated. But in his own way he loved, and in his even more complicated way he protected. She put on the necklace. The family weight against her neck brought memories. The simple wedding, the happiness of that day, the dreams they shared. Not everything was bad. There were good moments, many of them. They were just tainted by the secrets. Raymond came for dinner that night, as had become the custom on Fridays. He noticed the necklace immediately. "Is it new?" "Old, actually. Very old." She told him about the bank-safe deposit box, the last gift from Arthur. Raymond listened in silence. He really thought of everything, didn't he? Every detail, obsessively. Do you think he planned everything from when he was alive? Or was it after he got sick? I don't know. Maybe it started when he got sick and realized time was running out. Or maybe it was always like that, a man planning for after his own life. It's strange to think about it, that someone can arrange so much after they're gone. It is, but it's also comforting in a way. It means he cared, that he thought about the future, even though he wouldn't be in it. They dined together, talking about trivial things. Raymond's children's school, Martha's plans for the garden, the community gossip. It was a normal, simple life, exactly what Martha needed. After Raymond left, Martha sat on the porch they had built during the renovation. The night air was cool, full of the sounds of crickets and other insects. The sky was full of stars, much more visible there in rural Nebraska than they were on the Upper East Side. She thought about everything that had happened, from the reading of the will until now. Months of suffering, discoveries, revelations. The journey from a humiliated widow to a strengthened woman. It didn't change who she fundamentally was, but she discovered layers of herself she didn't know existed. The strength Arthur mentioned in the letter had always been there, but it was dormant, hidden under years of comfort and routine. She needed to be torn from the comfortable, thrown into the miserable, to awaken. Would she be grateful? She wasn't sure. It still hurt. There was still resentment. But there was also understanding, and perhaps, eventually, forgiveness. Time passed. The seasons changed. The straw-thatched cottage withstood new storms, now reinforced and strong. The garden bloomed, then rested in winter, then bloomed again. The cycle of life continued. Martha turned 73. Raymond organized a small party on the property. Neighbors came, friends she had made in the region, some acquaintances from the neighboring town. It was a simple but joyful celebration. Jennifer brought a homemade cake. Pamela, her sister, arranged modest decorations. The children ran around the grounds, playing hide-and-seek among the trees that had grown considerably. As everyone sang happy birthday, Martha looked around. Those people, that place, that life. A year ago she was at rock bottom. She thought everything was lost. But it wasn't. It was just beginning again. "Make a wish," Raymond said, holding his youngest daughter in his lap. Martha closed her eyes. What to wish for? Health. She already had it. Peace. She was building it. Love. It was all around, in forms different from what she knew before. But it was there. She opened her eyes and blew out the candles. The wish remained hers alone. But it was simple. Strength to continue. To turn every challenge into an opportunity, every pain into a lesson. The party continued late. When everyone had left, Martha stayed on the porch again, listening to the silence of the night. Arthur's necklace was around her neck, as it always was now. She touched the pendant and whispered into the night. "Thank you for the chaos, for the pain, for forcing me to be strong. I don't know if I forgive you completely, but I understand, and that is something." In the silence that followed, she could almost feel a reply, not in words, but in sensations. The breeze that touched her face, the distant sound of an owl, the glow of the stars. Life went on, and she was alive, truly alive, for the first time in a long while. The following years brought more changes. The community grew. More families moved to the region, attracted by the improvements Martha had helped fund. The small school expanded. The community health clinic gained more equipment. The region prospered quietly but consistently. Martha became a respected figure, not for her wealth, which she kept discreet, but for her wisdom. People came to ask for advice, women going through similar hardships, recent widows, families in conflict. She listened, shared her story when appropriate, offered perspective. She never positioned herself as an example to be followed. Each situation was unique, but her journey resonated. The message that it is possible to start over, even when all seems lost, had power. Raymond brought more documents one day. They were old, found among the belongings of an aunt who had passed away. More information about Elizabeth, about her life before she met Arthur. They discovered she had been a teacher, loved literature, dreamed of writing books. She never managed to. Life was too short. "I think she and you would have been friends," Raymond said. "From what I'm discovering about her, you shared similar values. It's comforting to think so, that it wouldn't have been a rivalry, but mutual respect. My father was lucky. He loved two incredible women." He was, and he lost one too soon. Perhaps that's why he held on so tightly. He didn't want to lose again, so he tried to control everything. It doesn't justify the secrets. No, but it explains. They used the information about Elizabeth to create a small community library. Nothing grand, just a room attached to the school, with donated books and some purchased ones. They named it in honor of Elizabeth Miller, with a plaque explaining who she was. Teacher, dreamer, mother. Even if her time was brief, she deserved to be remembered. The opening was moving. Raymond gave a speech about the mother he never knew but was beginning to understand. Martha spoke about second chances and legacies that transcend life. The school children sang. It was simple but meaningful. Linda never recovered from the exposure of her lies. She tried to reconcile a few times, sending letters that Martha never answered. Other family members cut ties with her. She died a few years later, alone and bitter. Martha felt pity, not satisfaction. Greed had destroyed Linda from the inside long before it destroyed her reputation on the outside. The lawyer, Mr. James Bennett, became a friend. He visited occasionally, always impressed with the transformation of the property and Martha's life. He offered help to organize a foundation in Arthur's name, to continue investing in the community in a structured way. Martha agreed, but with conditions: no pomp, no busts or plaques with names, just quiet, effective help. The foundation started small, focused on education and basic health. It offered scholarships for local youth, funded medical equipment, supported small local businesses, all without fanfare, without seeking recognition. Martha supervised personally, ensuring the resources were well used. She had learned through her own experience the value of every dollar. She would not waste Arthur's legacy on vanities or poorly planned projects. One day, a young woman from the community sought out Martha. She was about 20 years old, pregnant and abandoned by her boyfriend. Her family had turned their backs. She was desperate, not knowing what to do. "My grandmother said you might help," the young woman said, crying. "But I don't even know what to ask for." Martha had her sit down, offered water, waited for her to calm. "What's your name?" "Courtney." "Courtney, take a deep breath. We'll figure this out together." They talked for hours. Martha discovered that Courtney had been a good student, wanted to study nursing but had no resources. The pregnancy had been accidental, and the boyfriend fled from his responsibilities. "Do you want to have this baby?" Martha asked directly. "Yes, I know it will be difficult, but I want to." "Then let's make sure you have the means. First, proper prenatal care. Then, thinking about housing, resources. Can you work during the pregnancy?" "I think so, if it's nothing too heavy." Martha arranged a light job for Courtney at the community health clinic, organizing files and doing basic reception. She offered a small house she had bought to renovate, where Courtney could live without paying rent until she got back on her feet. And she promised to help with the baby's costs for the first few years. "Why are you doing this for me?" Courtney asked, incredulous. "You don't even know me." "Because someone did it for me when I needed it, and because every mother deserves a chance to build a decent life for her child." Courtney worked hard. She had proper prenatal care, gave birth to a healthy baby, and resumed her studies as soon as she could. Years later, she graduated as a nurse and got a stable job. She never forgot the help she received. Stories like Courtney's multiplied. Martha didn't help everyone who asked, but she helped those who showed a real desire to change. She didn't want to create dependency, but to offer opportunities. Raymond commented on a visit, "You're creating your own legacy, you know." It's not about legacy, it's about doing what's right. It can be both. Martha thought about that. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps she was, unconsciously building something that would last beyond her. But if she was, it was something different from what Arthur had done. It wasn't secretive, controlling, or testing. It was open, generous, and trusting. The property's garden became a reference point. People came from far away to see the flowers, to learn cultivation techniques. Martha didn't mind the visitors. She shared knowledge freely. Jennifer helped organize small workshops, teaching how to cultivate in dry soil, how to save water, how to compost. The straw-thatched cottage, now reinforced and beautiful, was a gathering place. Martha organized community coffees once a month, where everyone brought something to share. It wasn't just food, but stories, music, laughter. The loneliness she felt at the beginning had been replaced by a deep connection with dozens of people. One night, alone again on the porch, Martha reflected on the entire journey. From the humiliated widow carrying old suitcases to the respected matriarch of a flourishing community. The transformation seemed unreal at times. Arthur's secret had changed everything, but not in the way he had planned. He wanted to test her, force her to be strong. He succeeded, but he also unleashed something he probably didn't expect, a version of Martha completely independent of him, of his expectations, of his manipulations. She was strong not because he forced her, but because she chose to be. She stayed in the house not because it was a test, but because she saw value where others saw misery. She prospered not because of the hidden resources, but because of the community she built. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like, and especially to subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out, now continuing. Arthur's resources helped, of course, but they were tools. What made the difference was how she chose to use them. She could have become rich and isolated. She chose to be comfortable and connected. She could have sought revenge against Linda. She chose indifference and inner peace. Each choice led to another, building a life she never imagined at 72. She always thought that age would be for rest, perhaps grandchildren, quiet gardening, and she had all of that, but she also had purpose, impact, relevance. Raymond married again a few years later. His first wife had passed in an accident. The new wife, Susan, was wonderful. Martha adored her immediately. Susan was a doctor. She volunteered at the community health clinic, expanding the services offered. Together, Raymond and Susan had more children. Martha's property became a gathering place for the entire extended family. Christmas, birthdays, weekends. The straw-thatched cottage that should have been her shame became a center of love and joy. One Sunday afternoon, with the whole family gathered, children running in the garden, adults talking on the porch, Martha had a moment of absolute clarity. She was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. It wasn't the superficial happiness of having things, but the deep satisfaction of having meaning. "What are you thinking about?" Susan asked, sitting down beside her. "About how strange life is," Martha replied, "how the worst moments can lead to the best places." "Are you talking about when you arrived here?" "Yes, I thought it was the end, that I would have nothing but misery and loneliness, but it was just the beginning." Raymond told me the whole story. What Arthur did was cruel in some ways. It was, but it was also liberating in a way. It forced me to find strengths I didn't know I had. You would have discovered yourself anyway, I think. Some people just have that inside them. Perhaps, but I could have lived my whole life without realizing it. The two fell into a comfortable silence, watching the children play. One of them, Raymond's youngest granddaughter, ran up to Martha with a flower picked from the garden. "Grandma Martha, this is for you." Martha took the flower with a smile. She wasn't the girl's biological grandmother, but the title had been adopted naturally. Family wasn't just blood, it was choice and love. "Thank you, sweetheart. It's beautiful. Just like you." The girl smiled and ran back to play. Martha twirled the flower between her fingers, admiring the delicate petals. It was a flower she herself had planted months ago. Seeing it bloom, picked by small hands and offered with pure love, completed a perfect cycle. The years kept passing. Martha turned 75, then 77. Her health remained reasonably good, thanks to care and an active lifestyle. She still worked in the garden, still attended community meetings, still helped those in need. But she began to think more about endings, not in a morbid way, but a practical one. She had built so much. She needed to ensure it would continue after her. She spoke with Mr. James Bennett about structuring the foundation better, ensuring it would have competent management when she was no longer there. "You still have many years ahead of you," he said, "but helped anyway." "I hope so, but I can't count on it." They organized everything meticulously. Raymond would be the main person in charge of the foundation, supported by a board of community members. The resources were invested safely, generating sustainable income. The priorities were clear: education, health, and support for families in difficulty. Martha also updated her own will. The straw-thatched cottage would go to Raymond, to be kept as it was, or transformed as he wished. Other properties would be sold, and the funds channeled into the foundation. Jewelry and personal belongings would be divided among specific people who had helped over the years. She didn't want her departure to cause confusion or conflict. She had learned from Arthur's mistakes. Clarity was better than mystery. Trust better than tests. One day, almost a decade after arriving at that property for the first time, Martha received an unexpected letter. It was from one of the sons she had with Arthur, Julian, who lived far away and rarely visited. The letter was long, full of apologies and explanations. Julian admitted he had been distant, too focused on his own life to notice what his mother had been through. He had recently gotten divorced, and the experience made him reflect on family relationships. He wanted to reconnect. "I wanted to know the life she had built." Martha read the letter several times. Part of her was hurt. Where was Julian when she needed him? When she was carrying suitcases to the middle of nowhere? When the whole family turned their backs? But another part, a larger part, understood. People fail. People get lost in their own lives. Judging was easy. Forgiving was hard but necessary. She replied to the letter inviting him to visit. Julian came a few weeks later, visibly nervous. When he arrived and saw the property, he was shocked. "Mum, this is incredible. I thought you were in a terrible situation." "I was, in the beginning, but it got better." "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you ask for help?" "Would you have helped?" Julian lowered his eyes, ashamed. "I don't know. Probably not. I was too focused on my own problems. That's why I didn't ask. I needed to solve it alone, or almost alone." She introduced Julian to Raymond and his family. It was strange at first, two half-brothers who barely knew each other, but gradually they found common ground. Both had dealt with an absent father, each in their own way. Both had failed to recognize the value of their mother, stepmother, while there was still time. Julian stayed for a week. He helped in the garden, attended community meetings, met the people Martha considered family. On the day he left, he hugged his mother tightly. "I'll come back. It won't be like before. I'll be present." "I hope so. But not out of obligation, only if you really want to." "I want to." And he came back. Not often, the distance was real, but he called regularly, visited when he could, included Martha in the important moments of his life. It didn't completely fix years of absence, but he tried, and Martha valued the effort. Their stories spread beyond the community. A journalist from a larger city heard about it and asked to do a story. Martha hesitated but agreed as long as it focused on the community, not on her. The story came out beautifully, highlighting the improvements in the region, the library in honor of Elizabeth, the community health clinic, the small businesses supported. Martha was mentioned only as a local resident who chose to invest in the community instead of flaunting wealth. The story brought unexpected attention. Other small communities asked for advice on how to replicate the model. Martha and Raymond shared their learnings freely. It wasn't about a magic formula, but about principles, listening to real needs, investing wisely, building together instead of imposing solutions. Some tried to replicate and failed, others succeeded. Martha didn't feel responsible for the outcomes. Each community had its own particularities. What worked there might not work elsewhere, but the attempt was always worth it. One night, now almost 80, Martha had a vivid dream. She was again on that first day, standing in front of the straw-thatched cottage, falling to pieces, heavy suitcases in her hands. But this time, she saw a second version of herself, the current version, standing beside her. The older version smiled and said, "It will be hard. It will hurt a lot, but it will be worth it. Trust." The younger version cried, but nodded. Martha woke with her face wet with real tears. They weren't tears of sadness, but of understanding. If she could go back, would she change anything? Would she ask Arthur to be honest from the start? Would she fight to stay in the comfortable apartment? No. Even knowing all the pain, she would choose the same path. Because it led to this life, to this community, to this sense of purpose. Arthur may have orchestrated the beginning, but she wrote the rest of the story. The seasons kept changing. Springs brought new flowers. Hot summers tested their endurance. Autumns painted the garden gold. Quiet winters allowed for rest. Each cycle was welcome. Each phase had its beauty. Martha began writing her memoirs, not to publish, but to leave for the family. I wanted them to understand the complete journey, not just the beautiful moments. She wrote about the initial humiliation, about the nights crying on the dirt floor, about the painful secrets she discovered. But she also wrote about the first hands extended in help, about the strength she found in moments of despair, about the community that welcomed her. She wrote about forgiveness, not just forgiving Arthur or Linda, but forgiving herself for not being perfect. The process of writing was cathartic. Revisiting each moment with the perspective of time brought new understandings. Things that seemed insignificant at the time revealed themselves as crucial. Decisions that seemed wrong proved to be right. Life made more sense looking back. Raymond read the first chapters and was moved. This should be a real book. It could help so many people. I don't know, it's very personal. Exactly because of that. People need to know it's possible to start over. That strength can come from weakness. Martha considered it, but decided no. It wasn't about inspiring strangers. It was about leaving truth for those she loved. If eventually other people read it, it would be after her, and it would be Raymond's decision. The garden expanded again. Martha added a section dedicated to medicinal plants, working with Susan to create a small educational plot. School children would visit, learning about herbs that cured headaches, that soothed the stomach, that helped with sleep. It was practical knowledge, passed down from generation to generation. Martha had learned some things from her mother decades ago. Now she passed it on, the circle continuing. Nothing was lost, everything transformed. One afternoon, sitting under the shade of one of the trees Raymond planted years ago, Martha received a visit from Courtney, the young woman she helped when she was pregnant and abandoned. Courtney was now an established nurse, mother of 2, married. "I brought something for you," Courtney said, handing over a small wrapped package. Martha opened it and found a painting. It was the straw-thatched cottage, portrayed in vibrant colors, surrounded by the flower garden. It was beautiful, capturing the essence of the place. "My oldest son painted it. He's 10 and loves art. When I told him how you helped me, he wanted to make something special." "It's perfect," Martha said, moved. "Thank him for me." "You can thank him personally. I brought him—" Courtney waved and a shy boy approached. "Do you like it, Mrs.?" he asked. "I like it very much. You have a lot of talent." The boy blushed with pride. Martha invited them both inside, offered juice and cookies. They talked about school, about future plans. The boy wanted to be an artist when he grew up. Martha encouraged the dream, said the world needed beauty, and art was a way to create beauty. After they left, she hung the painting on the main wall of the house. She would look at it every day, remembering the impact small actions could have. Helping Courtney years ago wasn't a grand gesture. It was simple, offering an opportunity. But it resulted in this: a stable family, a talented child, lasting gratitude. The autumn of that year was particularly beautiful. The trees that had endured the dry weather showed surprising colors: gold, orange, red. The garden seemed ablaze with warm tones. Martha spent hours just observing, absorbing the beauty. She knew she was aging. Her body ached more easily. Her energy wasn't the same, but her mind was clear, her spirit was strong. She wasn't afraid of what was to come. She had lived fully. She had left an impact. She was at peace. Raymond and Susan had another child, a girl they named Elizabeth Martha. The name choice brought tears to Martha's eyes. It was recognition, respect, love. 2 women who marked Raymond's life, united in the name of a child who represented the future. At the baptism of little Elizabeth Martha, Martha held the baby carefully. So small, so fragile, so full of potential. She whispered a silent blessing. "May you grow strong. May you find love. May you overcome hardships. May you leave the world better than you found it." The baby slept peacefully in her arms, unaware of the weight of the name she carried, of the stories that preceded her. She was a new blank page ready to be written, and Martha knew it would be a beautiful story. The years passed. Martha turned 80. The community organized a big celebration, larger than any previous birthday. They decorated the main street, prepared food for hundreds of people, arranged musical performances. Martha protested, said she didn't need any of that. But they did it anyway, because they wanted to, because she represented something important to them. It wasn't about age, it was about impact, about example, about love. At the height of the party, the mayor from the neighboring town appeared. He brought a commemorative plaque declaring Martha an honorary citizen of the region. She accepted, embarrassed but grateful. She didn't give a long speech. She simply thanked the community that had welcomed her when she was at rock bottom, that helped rebuild not just a house, but a life. "You have given me far more than I have given you," she said, her voice choked. "Thank you for letting me be a part of this." The night ended with live music, dancing, laughter. Martha stayed out late, something rare for her. But she didn't want to miss a second of that joy, that connection. She danced slowly with Raymond, with Julian, who had come specifically for the party, with some of the oldest neighbors. When she finally went home, exhausted but happy, she looked back one last time. The lights still shone, people were still celebrating. Her heart was full. That community was her masterpiece, not the renovated house, not the flower garden, but the connected people, supporting each other, growing together. The following winter was harsh, unusually cold for the region. Martha spent more time indoors, protected, resting. It wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. Her body asked for rest and she listened. She used this time to finish writing her memoirs. She reviewed each chapter, making sure it was complete, that the truth was preserved. When she wrote the last word, she felt relief. It was done. Her story was recorded. She handed the manuscript to Raymond on a cold afternoon. "Keep this. Read it when you feel you should. Share it if you think it's appropriate. But it's yours now." "Mum, are you okay? This feels so final." "I'm fine. Just preparing. I don't know how much time I have. No one does. But I want to make sure the important things are settled." Raymond hugged her without words. Sometimes silence said more. Spring returned, bringing renewal. Martha returned to the garden, planting new seedlings. Each plant was a promise of continuity. She might not see everything bloom, but someone would. Life continued beyond any individual. One morning she woke feeling especially lucid, as if a veil had been lifted. She put on her best dress, put on Arthur's necklace, and sat on the porch with a cup of coffee. The sun rose slowly, painting the sky pink and gold. The birds sang their morning songs. The garden sparkled with dew. It was a perfect moment, simple but absolute. Martha thought of everything, of the young woman she had been, insecure but hopeful, of the wife she became, dedicated but unaware, of the widow she turned into, humiliated but not broken, of the woman she was now, strengthened and complete. The journey was not linear. It had deep falls and steep climbs. It had betrayals and loyalties. It had pain and joy. But it was her journey. Every step, every choice, every consequence. Arthur started the transformation with his secrets and tests, but she completed it with her own choices. She turned humiliation into motivation, loneliness into community, pain into purpose. Did she forgive him completely? She wasn't sure yet, but she understood. She understood that he had been flawed, human, complicated. She understood that love can coexist with mistakes. She understood that legacies are complex, never purely good or bad. The straw-thatched cottage, which should have been her shame, became her pride. Not because of the physical structure, though it was beautiful now, but because of what it represented: resilience, transformation, possibility. How many people had passed through there over the years? Hundreds, perhaps thousands. Each one took something, a seed, some advice, an example, hope. And each one left something too: gratitude, respect, love. Martha finished her coffee and closed her eyes, feeling the sun warm her face. She was tired, but it was a good tiredness. The tiredness of a life well lived, of work well done, of love well given. She didn't know how many years, months, or days she had left, but she knew each one would be lived fully, without regrets, without bitterness, only gratitude. Gratitude for the second chance life gave her. Gratitude for the strength she discovered. Gratitude for the community she built. End of story. This was a fictional story created to touch our hearts. Now tell us what you thought. Do you believe Martha made the right decisions? What would you do in her place? We would love to read your opinion. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and especially subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories.